United States, Donald Trump Jr.
You, Donald Trump Jr., are the second most popular person in the GOP behind your father.
They can't run on economy. They can't run on jobs. They can't run on energy. We're on the brink of war. There's not a single metric by which they're succeeding.
They will sell their souls to try to create, this narrative.
America is on to their nonsense. They're not going to let them get away with it again. They can't hide from it anymore. That's how sick our mainstream media is right now.
I have a little bit of that Trump gene, which is like, okay, we're going to fight now, so let's fight.
Hello, Mikey. All right, be good. What's going on, Turning Point? So good to be here with you, Kimberly. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Thank you. I say this is a slightly better welcome than what Asa, also known as Ada, got a few minutes ago. No, listen. Listen. I was impressed. He's made an incredible recovery since being murdered by Tucker Carlson on Friday. So it's good to see him here and recovering nicely. Hey, I'll say this. At least he had the balls to actually be here. Unlike our absentee governor, who's been on a perpetual book tour. So, guys, why are we here? Because, well, true. Guys, we're here because we've seen the disaster that is the Biden administration. We've seen the disaster that is Democrat policy. We see that we are literally at the closest point and the brink of World War III since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And no one cares. Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I saw Lindsey Graham last week say, it's the #1 issue for Republicans. I said, you know what's kind of weird? I travel the entire country. I have yet to meet a Republican outside of the United States Senate who actually thinks it's the #1 issue, or even a top 10 issue. We can't finish our border wall, but we have $130+ billion to send to defend Ukraine's border. Now think about that. What was it, like $3 billion left to finish ours? 130 to Ukraine. Now, that doesn't include the other $6 billion that just got lost last week. There was an accounting error, $6 billion more for Zelensky and his oligarch buddies to become billionaires, right? That doesn't include the $220 billion that the Pentagon lost a couple months ago. Remember that one? It's strange. The same government that wants to audit your Venmo account if you spend more than $600 seems to be awfully quiet about losing $220 billion. What's $220 billion between friends? I remember a time where cluster bombs were bad and we're not supposed to use them or send them anywhere, but just last week it seems like now it's all the rage. It's wonderful again. Right? It's hard to believe. We've seen the hypocrisy. And guys, I get it. I understand where I come from. I'm pretty self-aware. But if I'm pissed off when I go to the grocery store, think about that. I'm not supposed to notice, but if I do, imagine what that means to the average American family, what's going on right now. And this is what you get. Right? We're told Bidenomics is doing wonderful. I don't know where. I literally don't know a single person that's benefiting from any one of these policies, and yet they will continue. Oh! Thank you, sir, for giving me that opening. Well, according to Twitter, it was mine. You have the world's most famous crackhead in residence. And somehow it was mine, according to Twitter. I haven't been there in 3 years. I mean, think about that. I had a Secret Service detail. I've been through all the security protocols. I get it. My guys, who I stayed in touch with, many of them just dear friends, they're like, hey, dude, there's no way you would have gotten away with that. I go, I know. Luckily, I don't snort cocaine. It's not my thing. But when I make fun of Hunter, then they go, oh, Don, you're a terrible human being. You're making fun of someone with addiction. I go, wait. Like, addiction does not absolve you from being a piece of crap throughout every other aspect of your life. No. I have a feeling that if it was the Don Jr. laptop from hell, you all would have heard about it. Right? I mean, do you think that if I was videoing myself going 172 while smoking meth, I have a feeling magically CNN would find it to be relevant again? You know, you got 1 billion from China, millions from Ukraine for no-show jobs, money laundering for Russian oligarchs with ties to human trafficking and sex trafficking. No big deal, it's Hunter, it's fine. It's totally fine, 10% for the big guy. I have a feeling if that was my text message, we'd be at like impeachment 37? I don't know, where are we? I can't keep track, it's too many. It never ends, right? And those are the people in power. Those are the people deciding what happens to you, your children, your family's well-being, right? They are the arbiters of decency, according to the media. That piece of crap. I mean, think about it. Like, do you know, let's talk about this for a second. Do you know what my father would have done to me if it was my laptop? Like, yeah, my dad would have sent me to Gitmo. You're right. You know, I think Hunter could have used some of that tough love from Joe, but it seems Joe only loves sniffing children and maybe Hunter's sister. Where's the lie? Again, another thing that if it was my family, it would be a problem, because I read about all the things that are supposedly problems. They're all bullshit, just like everything else they started, but it doesn't matter. And that's where we are. So, with Trump, you had peace. Right? Remember the CNN? Well, who do you want to win? I just want everyone to stop dying. Like, at what other time in history was that not the right answer? Or a reasonable answer? And yet they lose their minds. It's funny, I was having a conversation with Tim Ballard. He's going to be on my podcast. He's the subject matter. He's going to be on my podcast this week, and we were talking about it. And I made 2 phone calls that were, maybe somewhat political just for them to look at, right? I don't get to, lobby for the government while my father's in power. I would have been in Gitmo, as we say, and they tried to do that anyway. One was for like the Pebble Mine. I thought that was an important environmental thing, so I just said, hey, you guys should look at this because here's the other side of the story. And they canceled that, which could have been a fiasco and a disaster. The other was, I had met Tim Ballard in like 16, and he's telling me this story. And I'm like, you know it's a problem, but you don't realize the volume. You don't realize the severity. You don't understand. Like, we can't even fathom that. And I remember, Tim goes and meets my father at the White House, and they're sitting there. My father announces they're gonna create a council looking at child sex trafficking and fund it with $200 million. The first person to actually do something about it. Yeah. And what happens? The left lost their minds. I mean, think about that. That's where we are. That's where we are as a country today, where if Donald Trump says, hey, let's take care of the problem of child sex trafficking, all of a sudden, that's not a problem. We're not going to look at that. We're for keeping it the way it is rather than doing something about it. That's today's Democrat Party. They're sick, right? They've lost their minds. And by the way, so have some of the rhinos. I mean, right? Asa, right? He vetoed the legislation that would have stopped the transition surgeries for minors in Arkansas. That's kind of a problem. Like, that's what you get when you have weaklings. That's what you get when you have people that answer to the left. They would rather be loved by CNN. Frankly, they'd like to be loved by all of, mainstream media, because even the conservative side has gotten what we call rather soft. Right? There's a difference, right? With Trump, you can actually have that peace just like he was able to achieve in the Middle East. At any other time, that would have been the holy grail of geopolitical politics. But because Trump did it, all of a sudden Middle East peace is bad somehow. You can't make it up, right? Same with North Korea. Remember that one? Trump's doing it all wrong in North Korea. I'm watching the news. I'm like, why? Why is he doing it all wrong? Well, because I've been head of the convoy for 40 years dealing with North America. I thought, well, like, what have you done? Like, since the Korean War, what have you actually accomplished? The answer was nothing. But it doesn't matter because there's no consequence for failure. There's no, you get a promotion. Just like there's no consequence if you're a leftist lying before Congress or being Hunter and bringing Coke to the White House, right? In fact, if you lie to Congress, whether it's Strzok, Brennan, McCabe, all these guys, they get promotions. They get contributorships, jobs at CNN and MSDNC. So they can lecture you about morality and decency after lying to the American people, abusing their power, their authority, and making a mockery of our federal law enforcement. There's a difference. We saw in the last 2 weeks just how important that is. We saw the decisions in the Supreme Court overturning affirmative action. You saw, how awesome was it watching Joy Reid? It was the first time I've watched in so long, but it was so nice. Oh my God! I went to Harvard, and I would have never gotten into Harvard if it wasn't for affirmative action. I'm like, are you kind of, like, I don't understand. Like, you're saying, I was not academically qualified. I was not particularly good at anything. I wasn't really bright, but I got into Harvard because of affirmative action. I go, don't you think you took, like, someone's spot who maybe actually deserved to be there? I'm waiting for, like, Ashton Kutcher to jump out of a cake and saying that I'm being punked because I'm like, she's making my argument. It's so nice when they don't even know that they're owning themselves. Right? You saw a Trump-appointed judge down in Louisiana, Missouri, say that the Biden administration and any administration is not allowed to collude with big tech to influence an election. Or otherwise. You saw that with the Hunter Biden laptop where people lied and magically said it was Russian disinformation. We've heard this before. Doesn't matter. They'll say it because there's no consequence. So that stopped. So everyone says, you know what? Well, any conservative would have given us conservative judges. Really? How many Republicans alive today would have stood by Brett Kavanaugh? Like, let's say 0. You think Mitt Romney would have done it? You think George Bush would have done it? No. They would have tucked, tailed, and run. You think, others? Chris Christie, you think he would have done it? The guy that gave us Christopher Wray, you think he would have done it? No. If you believe that he would have, I want to sell you his diet plan because it's been incredibly successful. No, but remember, right? Even Reagan gave us Sandra Day O'Connor. George Bush wanted to give us Harriet Miers. That would have been a disaster. It's not a guarantee that a conservative gives you conservative judges, especially the weak ones. And frankly, we've seen that so many are actually weak. That's the difference. You need that. It's so important because we're seeing the results of that now. As we get closer and closer to kind of crossing the Rubicon, becoming a socialist dictatorial regime, which it seems like we have, when we have a weaponized FBI, when we have an FBI and a DOJ that would call concerned mothers and parents domestic terrorists for going to a PTA meeting and being concerned about the indoctrination of our children. When you have an FBI that seems to miss every actual terrorist, they're on the list, but they're woke or they check a couple boxes, so we can't actually look at them because somehow finding bad guys would be out of the job description. Instead of doing that, they're going to focus on looking at Catholic churches because you must be a real extremist, right? They won't look at trans terror because, if you're trans in 2023, you're the most protected class in the history of the world. You can literally do anything you want and nothing will happen to you. We haven't seen the manifestos because, I've heard all sorts of other terrors are terror, except for trans terror. That's different. That's special. you get protected. And that's where we are, folks. We have an economy that's floundering. Interest rates are going through the roof. Wait till people's mortgages start resetting. You think you had pain in 08? You're going to see it again. You top that with inflation. You top that with the government forcing you. Joe Biden used his first veto to make sure that your retirement savings had to be managed under DEI and ESG type requirements. Because, it's not about making a good investment. It's about making sure we support our woke causes and our woke donors. Screw your retirement. Who cares? They don't. Right? Because, hey, Joe's set. His 10% will take care of the Bidens for life. Where'd it come from? Listen, I promise you, China does not invest $1 billion with Hunter because they thought he was a good investor. They're not like us. We need a little bit of diversity, so we're going to have a crackhead banker. The crackheads are underrepresented in the banking sector in China. So we're going to hire one, give them $1 billion just for diversity. I promise you, they are many things, but they're not stupid. And yet, no one even asked the question. No one asked the question, are we making decisions that could take us further into World War III because of stuff that maybe someone else has that we haven't even seen yet? Now think about that. You've seen all the stuff on the laptop. It's pretty damning. Imagine what, Hunter was like, I don't know, maybe this is too much to video. Right? It's like, you know what? That's a little far. I'm not going to video that. I'm sure someone has it. Because every decision we've made has been about making China first, putting America last. And so I saw this amazing thing. ABC News, I think I wrote it down here. They said something like, Trump's unprecedented campaign pitch. Elect me to get revenge on the government. I was like, wait a minute. You had me at really strong economy. I was like, I love that. Peace in the Middle East, pretty good. Ending the never-ending wars. But now, you're adding that. They think that's a bad thing. I'm like, that's all I need. I'm good, I'm in. Okay? And that's what he's going to do, because that's the reality now. Right? He came in as an outsider. He came in with actual real-world experience. He'd signed the front of a paycheck, not just the back of one. Right? He understood that. Remember the old Obama? Well, Donald Trump says he's going to fix the economy. He's going to create energy independence. There's no magic wand for that. Abracadabra. Oh, there's a magic wand. You just have to know something about anything. You just have to be able to put America first. Not kowtow to the Chinese. Not fold and bow to every dictator that's out there. Right? Now, Trump came in, he knew that business side, but what he didn't know was D.C. So you trust people. You listen, like I mentioned. You listen to Chris Christie. He said, this guy could be great for the FBI. Okay, you know. Well, disaster. Fine. But now, after 4 years, after seeing just how bad that swamp is, after seeing how they don't care about you, your well-being, they don't care about the Constitution, they care about furthering their power, their agenda, and ultimately getting on a board seat of big war or whatever it may be. That's why the D.C. Beltway, they don't produce anything, and yet they're the richest counties in the world. Right? That's why they're so against Trump, because now he knows that part of it too, and that scares them more than anything. That's why he's going to implement Schedule F. You guys know what that is, right? Where you literally fire all the bureaucrats. Get rid of them all. And again, Get rid of them all! And now, you don't have to run for re-election after that. You don't have to please anyone in the swamp. You don't care because, in all fairness, those people have tried to put him in jail for 450 years. So, let's just say you may have something, little motivation to go after and do it. But not just him. They tried to do it to me. They tried to do it to our family. They continue to try to do it to our businesses, whatever it may be, and that's fine. But that's why the Uni Party is so against it, because that hurts their power, their ability to make decisions that benefit them and screw you and your families. They've been doing it for decades, but now it's been exposed. And there's only one guy, folks. We've seen it. Well, yeah, I think Tucker ended a few careers on Friday. But I think, guys, there's a few more that have exposed themselves in the last few months, right? It's all right, sounds pretty good. Oh, they flip-flop because they got a call from the donor. Oh, they flip-flop because, you know, the Washington Post is going to write a mean article about them. Guy, there's only one person who doesn't care, who only cares about you, who, if he decided not to do any of this, all of this nonsense would go away in 2 seconds. You know that's the case. But there's one guy who knows that it's worth going through. There's one guy that knows that all of our freedoms, our liberties, your family's well-being are worth fighting for, and that is Donald J. Trump, and that's why we got to fight. So thank you very much, Turning Point. You guys are the best. Awesome to be here.